Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Robin Kelson to talk about her experience with seed Saving-Resiliency. Robin is the owner of Good Seed Company, Heirloom Seeds for Common Use, a small heirloom vegetable, flower, and herb seed company based in Whitefish, Montana, and dedicated to helping reestablish the community practice of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds for common use. The Good Seed Company envisions becoming a model for cultivating community-grown resilient seeds, seed saving, and gardeners, and offers workshops from soil to seed under the trade name DIY Grow, including a 1-year seed steward internship. DIY Grow seeks to reduce the barrier to entry for anyone wanting to take control of their food. A biochemist and attorney by training, Robin has spent over 30 years exploring human vitality, resiliency, and patterns in the world. In support of cultivating a sustainability perspective for our common future, she also offers the Resiliency Dialogues, presentations for all audiences that introduce simple tools from nature for practicing resiliency in any context and to invite dialogue on this subject. Wow, and welcome to the show today, Robin.
Thanks, Greg. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh.
I'm delighted you asked me.
Well, thank you. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to where you're at now?
Okay, sure. Let's see. Well, I didn't start all of this at once. I started by being interested in nutrition and what constitutes the ingredients for living a physically and energetically vibrant life at the human body level. And that took me in many directions, one of which was to look into what makes for nutrient-dense food. And part of that was getting involved into how do we improve the quality of our soil, because that's a real key element for nutrient-dense food. And while I was working on that concept in a variety of projects, I had the opportunity to purchase an heirloom seed company that was going out of business.
Wow.
That was owned by an extraordinary gentleman in northeastern Washington by the name of Harris Dunkelberger, who'd been growing and selecting and saving seeds on his homestead up in the wilds of northeastern Washington on 600 pristine acres.
Wow.
Up there. And he was he'd spent a long time identifying and saving seeds from varieties that did well in his climate zone. And these were extraordinary seeds, and he was retiring and didn't know what to do with his seed inventory, so I took it over. So I just didn't really know what I'd never owned a seed company before, and so that was a learning process. That was about 4.5 years ago, and I just kept leaning into it. So the first thing I did was go to seed school, which was sponsored through Native Seed Search at the time under Bill McDormand and Bell Starr's guidance and directorship. Now they have, of course, as you know, have their own Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance organization. Anyways, and so I learned from them really what's involved in saving seed and learning how to become a seed steward. And then that became, over time, really what I found myself focusing on as a niche is the function of the Good Seed Company, I determined, was how can we help our community reestablish a practice of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds for common use. That's what makes for a resilient community, and it makes for a resilient ecosystem. And in my opinion, it's the best way we can support our resiliency as a species, is literally the human species, which is, I think, the only species I'm really worried about not making it here over the long term.
Exactly.
I think the planet will do fine, but we might not make it. So how do we become more resilient? And that a big piece of it is taking ownership of our food supply again, and a big piece of that is our seeds. And so in order to do that, we have to work together as a community. So it's been a couple generations since we, as community members, took responsibility for our own food. You know, our ancestors did that naturally. Anyways, so that's really the niche that the seed company took over, and everything. So I just kept leaning into it, and so now my goal has been and is to get backyard growers to be within the community, to be the source for all the seeds that the seed company sells. I've probably got maybe at a maximum at the moment, a quarter to a third of our seed supply coming from our community, but that's continuing to grow. And I envision that in a couple of years, it'll be all within the community. And that'll make me just really happy. My goal actually as a business model is to become obsolete, that we don't need a company to do this, but that's down the road.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so part of that has been in order to help support. So it's just been a process of continuing to lean in, and so I then developed a series of workshops on helping people learn how to grow food, because in order, if you want to save seeds, first you have to grow food, and a lot of people don't really have a connection to growing food anymore. Right. And for some of them, it actually seems like a complicated or difficult thing. And so how can we reduce the barrier to entry for someone who wants to take control of their food supply? And so that's led to the education programs that we sponsor under DIY Grow. And in collaboration with Bill and Bell and the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, we specifically offer a 1-year seed internship.
Wow.
The seed steward internship, so that someone can learn, how to grow food for saving seeds and all the aspects involved with it. Really, my intention for that was twofold. One is to provide the resource for teaching people who can then become stewards and teach others, but also I'm specifically using the curriculum from Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance and want Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance to issue a certificate to the people who are successful interns at the end of the year, so that we can help educate people about Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance and let them know that what a valuable resource it is, not only for education, but also for, supporting the concept of a regional seed bank, and just help educate people to the concept of what they're trying to create through the Alliance.
Yeah. So, Robin, you have mentioned the word resiliency on several occasions. Can you kind of speak to that? What is it, and why we should be, paying attention to it?
Sure. So it's useful, I think, to talk about it as compared to the word sustainability. And that's a commonly used word, and they're probably both at risk of becoming buzzwords if they're not already. But sustainable really speaks more to conserving a balance by avoiding depletion of resources. And we talk about it often in the context of, our natural resources and maintaining a balance of avoiding depleting our natural resources so that we can be, say, a sustainable environment or whatever. Resiliency, on the other hand, really speaks more to the ability to recover from some kind of a disruptive change. It could be a negative change or a positive change, and it can be, we often talk about it in the context of, climate change, for example, because people are experiencing a lot of changes in climate that are highly disruptive. And a disruptive change is really characterized by being something that is difficult to predict and has a high risk associated with it. So, in a personal context, it could be, an unexpected illness or a fire, as a negative disruptive change. Or it could be, you get a call from Oprah to come on her show, or you win, the X Factor. Both of those are going to be, they're hard to predict, and they come with your life is going to change in an unexpected way.
Yeah.
And so how can you recover and adapt to that? And it's more and more of an issue, if you will, or a topic of conversation in this day where we seem to be experiencing extremes of weather that are difficult to predict, and that people, most people believe to be related to what we call climate change, and some people disagree. Is that, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down that road. Yeah. But, anyways. So with respect to seeds, we have a situation today where 95% of the agricultural crops that we, in America alone, rely on for our food, 95% of the varieties have disappeared, and they've disappeared because most of the seed supply is now in the hands of a small number of large corporations, and their job is to maximize the bottom line for their shareholders. And to do that, they grow 3 or 4, a small number of varieties of plants that do really well under their conditions. But the difficulty with that is that the genetics get reduced, and we don't have the variability that varieties provide within an agricultural crop species that could withstand unexpected changes from climate or pest or diseases that might show up unexpectedly. And so our seed supply is at risk of being resilient in the future. So I have found that as I talk about the seed company and I talk about this concept of helping a community reestablish the practice of selecting, saving, and sharing seeds, that the topic of resiliency is essential to the conversation.
I wanted to clarify something. You said that it is at risk of being resilient. You didn't mean that, I don't think.
I did not. What I meant is that it's at risk of no longer being resilient. Our food supply is at risk as a result. And the only way to redevelop that and rebuild resiliency in our seeds is at the community level, to start selecting, saving, and sharing our own seeds.
Yeah. Amen to that.
It's not more complicated or difficult than that, but it's easy to do. It just takes everybody leaning in and saying yes.
I love that you keep using that term, leaning in. I like that. It's very descriptive and explanatory. Yay. So given all this talk about resiliency, can you tell us more about your Resiliency Dialogue conversation that you've got going on?
Yes, sure. So as a way of introducing people to the topic of resiliency, and I started to ask myself the question, well, okay, great, resiliency is a great idea, but, how do you do it? Like, that's, all right, what does it mean to be resilient? How do I practice it?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of study and reading on it, and I found a body of work that's actually encapsulated in a book called Learning from the Octopus by a gentleman by the name of Rafe Sagarin, Sagarin. And he and the folks that he worked with, it was a group of about 8 or 10 scientists from a whole bunch of disciplines, put together, or what they did is they looked at a lot of different species that are still on the planet today, which by definition means they're successful and they're resilient because they've managed to survive a whole bunch of unexpected planetary disruptive events. And if you look at these species and you look at ecosystems that are still successful today, it turns out that there are 2 key principles and 6, I call them behavior choices, that can be extracted as a pattern that's common to all species that are resilient. And they're very simple. In fact, there's nothing new or unexpected among these principles or choices. It's just the idea of bringing them all together as a practice. And so I thought it was a really useful tool to learn. I found it had immediate application once I started to practice these tools just in my own life and in my business practice. They're really tools you can use in any application if your goal is long-time viability, whether it's of a business or a relationship, let alone a species or a planet. And so my thought was, if I can teach people about resiliency that they can apply in an area that's important to them in their lives, say their business or their relationship, for example, then they may, like I did, start to develop a larger perspective on the definition of resiliency, because it turns out I found myself developing a filter through which I saw everything as whether it was resilient or not resilient. And that actually helped me think more expansively about planetary resiliency, or how to be more effective in practicing resiliency within my community. And if we all start to do that, which again is another process of just leaning in, that will support all of us in starting to become, better resilient members of our species and our ecosystem as a community. So I talk about it at schools. I talk about it to, any organization that will have me. And I try to craft the conversation towards the makeup of the group that I'm talking to, and invite them to just practice it in an area of their life that's important to them, and then let it go from there. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and people seem to really enjoy listening to it because I put in lots of examples from nature, and that's always fun.
So I want to talk about your Good Seed company and its tagline, Heirloom Seeds for Common Use. What does that mean? And tell us about your company.
Okay, well, heirloom seeds are what are called open-pollinated seeds, and open-pollinated seeds are seeds that will grow true to type. So that means if you take the seeds from a squash plant, say a delicata squash plant those seeds, you'll get another delicata squash plant that pretty much tastes and looks and has the characteristics of the parent plant you started from. And that's different from what are called hybrid seeds that don't grow true to type. So all heirloom seeds are open-pollinated, true to type seeds. And an heirloom seed simply means that it's been passed down. It has traits that someone someone valued and selected for. And it could be, simply that your grandmother loved the taste of the Salmon River squash seed, saved the seed, and is now passing it on. But someone took some time to recognize traits that they liked in this plant. So they selected for it, then they saved the seeds from it, and then they shared them with a third person, which is another family member or a neighbor or whatever. So it encapsulates those three critical elements for resilient seeds, which is selecting, saving, and sharing. It's critical that if you want to maintain the genetics of a quality you like, you have to select for it. You have to say, I value the fact that this has a certain flavor, or that it stores well, or that it, survives early frost. You have to keep selecting seeds from those plants. Otherwise, you sort of, they talk about the traits being diluted or being kind of lost. So that's a key element. Then you have to save the seeds from it. That's another key element. And then most importantly, in my opinion, you have to share the seeds. And the key for sharing seeds is that you keep the genetics vibrant and you keep the genetic diversity in this plant, which is critical for being able to be resilient for unexpected acts that might show up from climate or pests. If we all had seeds from the same genetic parent and that were all grown in the same conditions, we're not getting variability that could withstand unexpected changes. So you grow grandma's Salmon River squash in your backyard, I'll grow it in mine, and our neighbor down the road will grow it in theirs, and we all share some of our seeds. We're all going to get some mix of genetics that will better support all of us when there's something unexpected that happens.
Beautiful. So you're actually, and this was a curious thing that you said a little while ago, you're actually using your customers to grow out seeds for you? Did I say that correctly?
So the seed company Good Seed Company is really dedicated more towards backyard growers and small farmers than, we don't do large scale production really on any scale.
Right.
But so we're really directed to the backyard grower. And my vision and goal is that backyard growers and small farmers become the seed producers for the company in the future.
So I'm over here. I'm over here jumping up and down saying, okay, I want to play. I mean, I would love to grow out a couple of different varieties for you. How does somebody, if they're jumping out of their seat at this moment saying, oh my gosh, that's cool. How do we interact with you to make that happen?
Okay, so then here comes the DIY grow thing, because now we need to teach you how to grow plants for saving seeds and how to save those seeds, So the other piece of it is, again, this is a niche for the Good Seed Company. We sell both certified organic seed and what I call, or what the Good Seed Company calls, ecologically farmed seeds, because backyard growers are not going to go through the process of being certified organic.
Yeah.
But we teach them how to be ecological farmers, which is what our ancestors were for thousands of years.
Right.
Our ancestors were basically organic farmers. They just were never certified by a government agency. So, we teach them what's involved in that, and it's basically, growing food in healthy soil, in harmony with nature, and all of the components that go into that. So we teach them how to do that. We teach them, depending on the seed crop, there are some seed crops that are easy to grow for seed. There are others that are more complicated because there's cross-pollination issues. And, so we teach them all that process. We teach them how to save the seed, harvest the seed, do the germination testing. So there's lots of steps to it. And all of those are tools and skills that are really for the community to have access to.
Yeah.
And as we teach them all these skills, they can now become seed growers.
Yeah.
And we sell their seed, and we're a very young company in this new paradigm. Mm-hmm. And in terms of creating a profit for our seed growers, that's really kind of down the road yet. But we certainly compensate them, as best we can, to support them in making this a positive endeavor for themselves and the community.
Cool. Excellent. So what's your website address?
goodseedco.net.
Perfect. So if y'all are out there listening and want to start playing, goodseedco.net.
That's correct. Fantastic. And we also have a Facebook page if you want to connect with us that way. We communicate with lots of people via the Facebook page as well.
Perfect. And we'll have all that on the show notes page as well.
Okay.
So if there was one thing you could communicate to anyone curious about seed saving, what would that be?
It would be just lean in. Just start saving something. Start, it's easy to save seed. It really is. The first people who saved seeds did not have a PhD. The worst, as Bill McDorman will say, if you fail, at least you got the food to eat. It's just not. It's just there's no downside. There really are no failures.
Yeah.
Try and learn.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, once you get bitten by that bug, there's no going back. I think you'll become a seed saver for life.
Oh yeah. I hear you on that.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So one more technical kind of question, and then we're going to shift. Intellectual property and seed saving. What's the relationship? I know.
Oh, it's funny. I thought about that. It's like the idea behind intellectual property, behind patents, I guess, it was originally designed by our forefathers in the legal system, was to promote the advancement of science and development. The idea was that if you shared your invention with the world, it would create more opportunity for expansion and creativity. Mm-hmm. And so that's what our forefathers did when they came up with a patent system. And it was never intended to be a way of keeping things from others. And so, when our forefathers in the legal systems thought about patents, they were thinking about mechanical devices and
Right.
things that were widgets that you made. And it's only in the area when patenting started to apply to living things, genes and plants, for example, that it's actually had the opposite effect. It keeps things that really should be for the common use out of people's hands. So there's we have this whole phenomenon of patented seeds, which makes it impossible for many people to grow and save certain seed varieties, which is, in my humble opinion, ludicrous and antithetical to what was intended by the patent system or, by human nature, period.
Right.
So I guess I see seed saving as a small act of defiance.
I love that.
So I don't know what to say. There's another word for it. I can't think of it right now.
No, that's
but
good.
It's a small act of rebellion.
Yeah.
And in honor of life, basically, and our success as a species and human nature.
Yeah. So for my longtime listeners, they know that I'm always looking for epic. And what you just said is epic. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I also find it ludicrous to be able to patent life. That just seems, it's head spinning to me. It's like, what is that about? So.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I agree.
Through your company, the Good Seed Company, you co-sponsored Free the Seeds, a festival in March of 2016. Yes. What was it, and are you going to do it again?
Yes. So last year was the first annual, and we named it the first annual event. And it's really the work, I helped co-sponsor it. It's the work of a group of members of our community that got together to have kind of a large-scale seed swap, sort of like the Seed Up. Is that what it's called? The program that's in Arizona?
Yeah. The Great American Seed Up that Bill and Bell and Cardi and I do. Yeah.
Exactly. So the idea behind Free the Seeds is to develop a community-powered opportunity for building a sustainable and resilient future through real seeds, real food, and real skills. So we had a seed swap, a old-fashioned seed swap, and also plant starts for sharing heirloom seeds and plant starts.
Wow.
We had 18 workshops that were intended to develop skill-building resources for both curious beginners and what we call humble experts. Mm-hmm. And then we had a whole bunch of booths. The first year we had over 30 booths, and this year we're going to have over 50 that were all information and resource dedicated. And the idea was we wanted to be able to provide information for anyone who has any level of interest in taking control of their food again. And our intention was to make sure, to the best of our ability, that we put the invitation out to anybody who had any interest within like a 250-mile radius. Uh-huh. And I think we really kind of thought we would have about 350 people, and 1,600 people showed up.
Wow.
It blew our minds.
Nice.
And when we could finally catch our breath and think about it, we felt like we were in the middle of a tipping point, or a revolution or something.
We are.
A movement.
Yep.
And this is now Robin speaking. I'm not speaking for anybody else on the committee. Just know that. This is because this is through my lens. In my personal opinion, I would say at least a third, if not half, of the demographics of those 1,600 people were people who didn't really know much about growing food or necessarily organic or necessarily, anything like that, but were there because they or someone in their family had some chronic disorder in their system, and the traditional Western approach to working with that has not been successful.
Yeah.
And all they know is that if healthy food is helpful and I don't know any more than that, and maybe I can get information here.
Yeah.
That's really what I thought was
Wow.
different.
Uh-huh.
And I was so pleased that we were able to be responsive to that demographic, because that's a growing demographic. And
Big
if
time.
that demographic can get engaged, I think we're home free for this shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said
yeah.
You said within 250-mile radius of where?
Good point. Excellent. So we held the fair in Kalispell, Montana, which is in Flathead County, and we sent out invitations to the two other counties north and south of us. One is called Lake County, and I'm blanking on the name of the county north of us, but it's up to the Canadian border in the town of Eureka.
Wow.
And we did this whole thing from inception to production was 11 weeks. 10 people coming together saying, yes, let's make it happen. And we did it all in 10 weeks. It was unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
But it was just more and more information of, when the time is right, anything is possible.
Uh-huh.
And we did it for $1,000, and it was incredible.
Wow.
Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this year, we've allocated more space and more time to accommodate 2,000 participants. We're anticipating that we might get that many, and we're set up to accommodate that many. And we've got 50 booths this year, and we're going to have I don't know how many workshops. So, and we also had two roundtable discussions. One was for local producers, to have a resource for getting together and talking about how to support themselves in any way that was important for them.
Uh-huh.
And the other roundtable discussion was directed to developing a seed library. And out of that, the Good Seed Company and the local county library system called Envisions Libraries have co-founded a county seed library.
Nice.
That we're going to unveil at this year's Free the Seeds event on March 4th.
Yeah.
So we're so proud of the fact that, we set the intention, it manifested with grace and ease, and it's off and running.
Yeah. Wow. That is all quite epic. Thank you for doing that. And it also points to, metaphorically, when we start planting seeds, look what happens.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. Yeah. It just that phrase just keeps doing its own thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift on you, and I'd like for you to talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Mm-hmm. I can think of many times I've failed, but one time that just keeps coming up is back when I was an attorney. I mean, primarily only an attorney, I guess. Many years ago, I had to give a presentation to all the other attorneys in my very large law firm, and I was terrified, and I didn't know I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And I'm not sure, I think probably the talk went fine from everybody else's perspective, but it was a miserable experience for me. And I felt like that was a failure. And as I've reflected on it, in the context of answering this question, what I took away from it, I don't think at the time, but I've thought about it since, was that sense that I couldn't ask for help, or that I didn't know that there were other resources available. And in these dialogues resiliency dialogues that I do, one of the key elements, among a list of 6 essential ingredients, in my opinion, perhaps the most important one is seeking outside assistance, sharing resources, and cooperation. If you look at successful species in nature, there is not one example, literally not one example of a multicellular organism on the planet today that got there by living in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Every organism has relied on some other organism to get where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essential. We can't survive without it. And so that's just a big takeaway for me, and it's something that I embrace more and more each day. It's because it's probably been my learning curve, is learning to embrace cooperation and recognize it's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Yeah. I have said for years that competition is killing the planet. What we need is cooperation. So I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you consider your biggest success?
I think learning to let go of the fact that I think I know everything, and embracing the fact that there's much more available to me when I can let go of that.
Yeah.
And embrace the fact that, here's another element from the 6 principles of the Resiliency Dialogues, is that, well, I guess it's the same thing, that concept of sharing resources. If you want to have synergistic results, transformational results, or quantum leaps in expansion, cooperation and sharing resources is essential.
Yeah.
So it's the only way to do transformation. It's the only way to do transformation.
Yeah.
And I think the success we had with Free the Seeds is an example of that.
Absolutely.
Because it only happened because multiple people all leaned in and shared equal loads, and there was literally no ego involved, or very little.
Yeah. Beautiful. So what drives you?
At a mental, scientific, inquisitive level, I have just a fundamental curiosity about what constitutes the elements of vibrancy in the human species. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at it from lots of different perspectives: physical, energetic, emotional, spiritual, chemical, biological, whatever. Looked at it from lots of different levels. So that drives me. I can't explain it other than it's just what drives me, and I get a lot of joy out of it. I get a lot of joy out of thinking about it and questioning, just asking questions about it. I'm very curious about it. And another thing, I feel like I'm, pushing something here, but there's another element of these 6 resiliency principles, and one of them is that nature is recursive. Nature builds on what works.
Oh, yes.
It just literally keeps leaning in. This works. I'm just going to do more of this. I'm going to do more of this, and it creates a spiral. It's the Fibonacci spiral that you see all over in nature. Mm-hmm. But it's that concept of leaning in. And so another thing that does drive me is when I feel something that's working, responsive to this question of my curiosity around vitality and vibrancy at the human level, mm-hmm. I just keep following that. And I find that the more I follow that, my world just keeps getting bigger and more expansive and fuller. And mm-hmm. I thoroughly enjoy that. It brings me tremendous joy, even though I don't necessarily know what's around the corner. Yeah. Ever. Yeah. Wow. That's okay.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely okay. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there a book that has been influential for you in this process in your life?
I'm sure the answer is yes. I'm trying to think of what that one book is. So there are 2 books that are popping into my mind right this second to share. Mm-hmm. And one of them is the translation of the Tao that is translated by Stephen Mitchell. There are many translations of it, but I respond very strongly to the one by Stephen Mitchell. And the other book is Will Bonsel's new book called The Essential Guide to Radical Self-Reliant Gardening. It's extraordinarily well written mm-hmm. and thoughtfully written by somebody who has developed the means for creating a resilient system that doesn't rely on animal inputs or fossil fuel inputs for a healthy soil and reliant gardening system.
Awesome. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
Oh, I just invite you to follow your curiosity, listen to your intuition, trust your body's knowledge, and do everything you can to get healthy food in your body. And that includes supporting your local farmers, voting your conscience through your dollars, and starting to grow your own food. There is just it literally is balm for the body and the soul to put your hands in dirt and let the soil feed you at all levels.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen to that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Robin. It has been a treat getting to chat with you.
Ditto. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Greg. Thank you so much for asking me to come on the show.
Oh, yeah, you bet. So a couple of things. First of all, how can our listeners get a hold of you?
Okay. The easiest way is through our website. We have a contact page there. Our website, again, is goodseedco.net. And send us an email, and we can happy to communicate with you that way.
Perfect.
And we have lots of resources on the website if you want more information. We also have a Facebook page. You can post something or send us a messenger question that way as well.
Nice.
And that's just called the Good Seed Company.
And for those of us that are interested in actually growing seed with you, or possibly the internship program, where do we find out about that?
So we have that information. Some of it's already on the website under our DIY Grow button, and more of it will be coming shortly. If you don't have enough information from what you see on the website, again, send us an email, and we'll hook you up with information that we have in print form.
Perfect. Thank you. You can also find show notes from today's podcast at urbanfarm.org/goodseed. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Greg Peterson here, and I want to thank you for listening to the Urban Farm Podcast. We wouldn't be able to keep doing these great shows without you. So as a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer you access to a list of our top 10 episodes I personally find most inspiring. If you enjoy the Urban Farm Podcast but don't have time to listen to every one, then you will love this list. Although all our guests have great information to offer, if you are short on time, these 10 are must-listens. To get access to the top 10 most inspiring podcast episodes, text FARMER to 44222. That's FARMER to 44222. And enjoy listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.